going to be discussing today is the state of current sample and panel and respondent data and our efforts as an industry to use technology to better cleanse that, specifically with an eye on artificial intelligence. Quick introduction, my name is Sam Pisani, Managing Partner of the Logit Group.
And I'm Steve Mail, VP Innovation and Strategic Partnerships.
And the Logit Group started off 25 years ago as a traditional bricks and mortar data collection house, largely Caddy. And we've evolved over the years, spinning into online, and over the past 5 years, we've had a significant investment and focus on innovation within the space of execution, largely with enhancing respondent engagement and the experience for respondents with an eye towards getting better quality data. As of late, as AI has taken hold, and as we've seen a proliferation of bad actors and data quality issues, we've had a significant focus on the data quality side, specifically with our ResTech offering that is sampling, and we'll talk about throughout the session.
So I know everybody here said to themselves, you know, we need another AI-based session. I'm pretty sure you haven't seen enough of that over the past few conferences, and this one as well. But we wanted to take a lens or approach where it's practical application of AI. We're running these studies right now. We'll cover a few research projects that we've run recently, showing some of the impacts of these tools that we've deployed. So first, we'll give a little bit of a highlight on data quality, why it's important, and why it matters to us as an industry. We'll unravel some of the mysteries of data quality, why we've seen a kind of a decrease in quality over the past few years. We'll dive into how we're leveraging technology currently for data quality, some of the strategies that we as an industry can take away, and then best practices and recommendations before we go into a little bit of Q&A.
If time allows, then we'll definitely take some questions. And we like to make this as conversational as possible, so if anyone does have questions, raise your hands in the middle. We'd love to kind of foster conversation. So let's kind of start off with the easy question. Why data quality? Why is it important? We've obviously, these are not kind of game changers, but as researchers, we need to provide reliable insights throughout the process. Ensure that MR insights accurately reflect basically who we're trying to interview and the data we're trying to collect, and thus provide effective decision-making tools for our stakeholders. But also, data quality and innovation is going to allow us to get deeper into the insights, getting at the why of a participant's response. And one thing that we talk about often within our organization, within our clients, is a study that came out in Q4 2022 that some of you may be heard of, from Kantar, where companies are discarding up to 38% of the data they're collecting because of quality concerns and perceived potential panel fraud. So it's an ongoing, everyday issue for us as an industry.
So why are we seeing some poor quality data, or why is there the perception of the insights that we're seeing aren't as great as what we had seen in the past? So there's a couple of things that we're seeing as challenges across the industry. The first is, when we think about panel or sample sources, we think of that traditional double opt-in panel. That still exists to a certain degree, but there's a lot of other sample sources that have kind of supplemented that from non-traditional panelized sources, whether that's through affiliate traffic, router-based traffic systems. We're seeing a lot more increase in sample and those side of things. Secondly, there's a lack of profiling and known data on these subsidiary sources. So before a double opt-in panel, we'd engage them in periodic profiling studies. That's not necessarily done to the same extent as it once was. And lastly, we rely a lot on the data that's given to us from panelists or respondents, right? One of the examples that I always use is like if you're looking for Fortune 500 CEOs, there's probably about 700 of them out there because people know that if they qualify or answer in a certain way, they're going to qualify for more surveys. So in terms of how we leverage this for data quality, what things that we can do using technology. We're at a really interesting crossroads in time. I always kind of equate what we've seen this year to when the internet first came to prominence in the 90s, right? We're at a stage now where we need to adapt and we need to utilize this for the greater good of the industry. So part of that's going to be increased automation, so removing human intervention and bias wherever possible. We can do that now with AI technology. And because we can deploy AI on surveys in real time, it's going to lead to more real-time decision-making capabilities. And because AI can be used at scale and mass with relatively low cost, it's going to allow us to do more with less. So companies that are smaller in size and scope can now compete at a larger scale.
So we're going to kind of cover three different themes, all related to AI today. AI sentiment analysis, validating open-ended survey responses in real time, and trying to get an immediate real-time lens on what we're getting back from respondents. AI coding and theming, again, looking at things in a real-time perspective, being able to provide dynamic branching in surveys, and where we normally wouldn't beforehand. And of course, the one question that we're going to end with is AI versus AI. People have probably been to countless AI sessions. We need to be, as research practitioners, aware that every tool at our disposal and everything that we develop as a basis in AI is going to be in the hands of the bad actors as well. So whenever we talk about quality standards, data quality, finding these solutions to better and cleanse the sample ecosystem, it's constantly changing, because whatever we've got at our disposal, bad actors will undoubtedly have at their disposal, and oftentimes are even more motivated because of what they're doing and the incentive work that they're trying to pull out of our survey ecosystem. They're even more motivated to action that. So research on research, we're going to discuss kind of three things that we worked on and we fielded recent studies we want to use as touch points across our presentation today. So utilizing AI to detect poor quality responses and being able to clean that data right away. We're going to go through one of our studies that we just fielded last week. Comparing AI to human review of open ends. How does that compare in terms of accuracy, and how does it compare in terms of speed? And thirdly, utilizing AI to enhance existing data. So let's start off with using AI to detect poor quality responses. So something interesting that we tried as we were working on this presentation is over the course of 24 hours, we interacted with more than 22,000 programmatically sourced panel respondents across the United States and used our question ID sentiment analysis tool to assess a very simple question. How would you describe your overall survey experience? They're in the router, they're completing surveys. Immediately, our AI sentiment tool flagged 15% of those as being complete and utter garbage, throwing them out. The response is nonsensical to the question, and another 20% was of potentially reviewable quality, depending on how we then tweak the algorithm and how the AI tool would learn. So we obviously know that there's a component of respondents, survey farms, pod farms, whatever the case may be, that are of issue. And if we don't find them and isolate them and cleanse them out at this point, they're going to obviously naturally filter through our process right through to our data. And some examples, some very obvious examples answering that question of how would you rate your survey experience is I do with Penny or tomorrow or Friday. If I can do that, you would like to. Like very, very obviously, fake responses that the tool would find in real time. The beauty of it in this instance is you can build that tool to automatically flag them and remove them before they actually even enter your survey environment. And then obviously the question is, and we discuss this as an industry all the time, what impact would these bad actors or poorly constructed respondents have on the data that you're delivering to your clients? Number two was we took and used AI to compare to human review, not necessarily from a coding perspective, but how would AI look at verbatims and kind of qualitative responses flagged and looked at compared to a coding manager or someone that's reviewing those responses. Question, why do you most frequently visit this gas station? An answer, because it's a convenient station for me, but I'm shopping and the price is low. Great response. From a human perspective, this was obviously an acceptable response. From the AI side, it was acceptable, it was coded as a positive sentiment, and it would be dynamically then allowing us to then branch off in real time if we wanted to actually have skip conditions or skip logic based on this type of response. Another answer, I'm not sure if I will be there for you, but if you don't, have a good day, I'll come to you. Obviously, not in any way applicable to the question. The human review failed that response. The AI obviously failed it and flagged it as a non-sentiment. And again, the real-time component allows you to cleanse that rather than doing that secondary check of, we're out of field, I'm now going to scrub my data, I'm going to look at those verbatims, I'm going to run any other secondary quality checks, and then go back into field to replace cases that I may want to then flag that were of poor quality. Where we see the greatest is in those very general positive terms, like good for me. Whereas 2 out of the 3 human reviews that we had in our office said that they deemed that as an acceptable response. Whereas our AI tool said too generic of a response. neutral sentiment, too generic. So again, you can kind of tighten the parameters for what you would deem a good response or a valuable qualitative response. And our question IQ tool, so overall, it's an AI-powered tool designed to validate open-ended survey responses in real time via API. And of course, it's the constant learning that helps. It's the ability to cut down on human resources, be able to deliver things faster and at a more competitive price point for your clients as well, by also providing better data. Benefits and applications can accurately determine the quality of an open-ended response in real time. As we mentioned, scoring can be used for routing, which is fantastic. For years, we would always, clients would ask, can I have any branching routing based on open ends, or can I get a more free-form question that I can use skip conditions on? And for the longest time, it was no within survey environments and platforms. Now we obviously can. And that sentiment tool also allows us to provide greater branching and more specific follow-up questions to respondents.
So we ran a third research on research project, and one of the things that we want to try and get insights on in this particular case study was we wanted to do a split test. So we took 250 people and ran them through a series of questions, basically looking at the stores that they most frequently visited for purchasing liquor and alcohol, right? So we did a split test, national US, legal drinking age. In the first group, we gave an unaided brand awareness question, so we asked them just what came top of mind. Then we showed them an aided brand list of some of the largest liquor and alcohol stores that they may have frequented. We then asked them for top mention in terms of which one they purchased from most frequently, followed by a reason for that preference, and then a generic follow-up asking if there's anything else that came to mind when they thought about that particular store. The second grouping, we bypassed that and we gave them the same unaided brand awareness question, but in this case here, we used question IQ to code that response. Based upon that response, we then asked them reason for the brand preference. We then coded that response and gave a specific question to follow up based upon that code. So in this case here, it was more structured and tailored specifically to the responses that they had given us, creating a unique survey experience for each individual respondent. So here are some of the things that we saw when it came to the unaided aided split versus the AI coding split. So we saw kind of similarities in terms of the stores that were mentioned. So in the unaided aided question, there was a lot of references to big box store references, Walmart, Costco, some of the other leading brand providers. And the key themes for choice were convenience, good price, variety, local, clean. We saw a lot of those similarly on the AI coding, but in the AI coding, we were actually able to flush out some additional insights that weren't seen on the the unaided aided segment. So in addition to some of the big box store mentions, we were able to flesh out some additional regional and small to mid-sized stores that were popular and common choices for alcohol and liquor consumption. And also we saw additional themes for choice. So one of the things that we saw when we asked for them to elaborate on it in the first split, we saw a lot of rehashing of the same answer, generic follow-up responses, whereas in the AI coded section where we asked specifically for them to follow up on the codes that were generated from their first answer, we saw a greater deep dive into additional themes. So we saw things such as flavor, friendly staff, good value, promotions, freebies, taste and value, all these things that didn't have the same resonance on the first split. So in the conclusion, I think one of the things that we found while using AI for this particular research case is that by having the ability to do real-time coding, it gave flexibility for how the study was displayed and shown to respondents. And then it gave us a much larger potential for discovering new or emerging ideas that we hadn't thought of when designing the questionnaire itself. So because of this, it allowed us to get a better understanding of each consumer and the consumer profile as a whole, and capture a wide array of responses and insights.
And the last thing that we want to touch on, which was in my introduction, was AI detection, which is becoming kind of like the buzzword now. We understand that there's a lot of benefit to AI, but a lot of the investment that we're putting in as an organization is not just in the survey experience, is also in the detection. a while back, put into place things like copy and paste tools to allow us to figure out whether respondents were actually typing the responses or copy and pasting. We've seen over the past few months suddenly a degree of verbiosity on respondents' parts, where they would, you'd get, and some of you may have seen this in your surveys as well, you'd get a lot of kind of keyboard crashers giving you either very, very simplistic, don't know, same as before, or just kind of gibberish, to now suddenly being very eloquent in their responses that are coming from ChatGPT or other type of AI sources. And they're trying to circumvent those logic checks by pasting in their open ends. So what we've been doing is investing a lot of time, and this is going to, as I mentioned, it's going to be a constantly moving and evolving goal line, because the bad actors will have the same tools that we're working on, but finding ways to ensure that we use AI not just for the survey experience, but from the quality perspective. And that's cleansing respondents out in as many different ways that we can, so that at the end of the day, I mean, our goal as all researchers is doesn't matter how narrow you've got to make that funnel, is that every response from every respondent is real, is thought out, is curated, and it provides value to the stakeholders and to the data and the analysis that you provide.
So just kind of wrapping up from what our learnings were on these research projects that we conducted. So obviously, when it comes to tools that we can utilize as an industry, anything we can do to automate some of the manual processes that we're doing in surveys is becoming more and more evident and important. Waiting to after the fact when a study closes to go back and review or code, obviously there's that delay, and once you scrub, you have to go back to field, and that leads to additional field time, additional costs. So anything we can do to automate that process in field is becoming more and more important. And to do this, obviously leveraging AI. Like AI is, in my opinion, not going anywhere. We're going to continue to build off it as an industry. It's how do we incorporate it strategically and effectively on the studies that we're fielding. So in terms of implementation, right now we're using these as quality control checks at points throughout the course of the study, but I think long-term we're going to incorporate these into much greater feedback loops to kind of alert us to problems as a whole across projects and areas within the fielding that we're conducting. And I think part of the process is training, obviously. I know a lot of times when we talk to clients, it's always, what are you implementing on your side to eliminate fraud or work against some of the fraudulent actors that we're seeing in our industry. But I think the other question that we always have is, like, on the client side, what can you be doing better to implement and incorporate some of this technology to further enhance the data insights that you're getting? I think it's up to all of us collectively to incorporate these tools as best as we possibly can.
And I think regardless of the tools or what we're doing as an industry, there has to be a willingness of the industry to shift, move, change, and to acknowledge what's being done well within the space, but also kind of find our collective blind spots on data quality. I mean, we do come to conferences, we share a lot of ideas, we collaborate, but there's always a sense kind of that we're always talking about the glass half full, and there's kind of a more rosy perspective on where we are. So it's acknowledging the challenges that we face and working through them every step of the way. That's including what you're doing internally, with your vendors, how you're reporting out, but it's that perspective of, if we're just mindful of it, that really is half the battle, and having clients invested through the process, acknowledging that there are those challenges and be willing to address them.
So in conclusion, I mean, the challenge that we have as researchers is we need to combat against bad actors using AI. As Sam mentioned, we're seeing more and more cases where this is happening now. It may be a case where everyone just got together overnight and decided to give us much more elaborate consensus or concise answers, but I doubt that's the case. In show of hands, who uses ChatGPT or Bard on a regular basis for at least some element of their work? We can't all be alone in that. So most people are utilizing it in some way, shape, or form. So again, I think AI is here to stay. It's going to continue to grow. Obviously, it's going to go through changes as regulation takes place. But I think we need to be mindful of the fact that we need to figure out collectively as an industry better ways to use it and how to incorporate it in the projects that we're doing. And part of that is going to be implementing AI where necessary. And the results, through the course of automation AI, we're going to be able to do, expedite field research projects that we're doing, faster turnarounds, better quality overall, which leads to better insights.
If anybody has some questions or to kind of continue a dialogue of one of the points we brought up, happy to take some questions.
Yeah, Two questions. What's the backbone AI? Is this ChatGPT, OpenAI? Are you using something else? And then the second question is just think, if you're thinking about bad actors trying to recoup money, are there different sample providers that use incentives that are less likely to attract bad actors? I would think, like, if you're handing lots of cash, then you would attract them, but maybe points in the catalog or something else may be less desirable.
Let's take the first question.
Sure, so I'll take the first question. So there are some components out there that we're using that are more on the high-level scale, so OpenAI, for example, but a lot of it's built off of our own models that we've created internally, so we're not sharing data back to the larger cloud. In terms of point two, I think that's debatable. We've done some research on that, and I've had a lot of conversations with people who have panels. I mean, I think the general consensus.
And we have several
yes.
partners we work with every day that are sitting here as well that can also jump in.
But I think there's the general consensus is when you have rewards or points-based systems, there's less incentive to cheat as opposed to cash rewards. I think most panels have switched to a model of that sort. But I mean, if you're giving out Amazon gift cards and Walmart cards, I mean, is it that much more detrimental to cheating than, say, a cash incentive? I don't know. It's debatable.
But those bad actors can take multiple forms, right? So there is the bad actor that's looking to extract incentives, but then there's also the potentially dubious offshore panels with limited background and credentials. I think we probably all wake up in the morning, depending on what time zone you're on, and you've got this litany of emails that have come from offshore panels that have illustrious, decades-long careers that we've never heard of before. But kind of if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck. Like being in Canada, our headquarters are in Toronto. We're global, but our headquarters is Toronto. And if there have been situations where I've had clients come to me looking at healthcare providers as an example, and I'll kind of get deep in the weeds. There are 68 nephrologists that are registered to practice in Canada, across the country. From our medical panel, we could probably source about half of them. But there are panels that are offshore that will promise that they can get 68 nephrologists to complete a survey. And so if they're not on a, SMR member, data quality, Canadian Research Insights Council member panel, and they're going to be on an offshore panel, like to me, that screams dubious quality. So there's the incentive action to get it out, and there's also the other actors that are causing havoc within our industry, and also kind of putting down. I look at our esteemed partners that are here on the panel side that supply us every day, that are also kind of bringing down the reputations of the panel business by supplying data that they know is of dubious quality, be it survey farms or whatever the case. So I think it's twofold. It's the incentives, but it's also these companies that are trying to extract CPIs, and it does happen a lot more with B2B, where they're niche audiences, higher incentives, higher CPIs, that this is happening as well. So it's kind of twofold. But thank you very much for the question. I don't know, do we have, are we okay for time?
We have about
No, we got 5 minutes. Yes?
Just had a question about how you're implementing it before the survey's being taken, and is it your panel, or is this something that would be partnered with another panel, and then that survey would come through,
So great question. So I've actually answered this question a few times today. So Logit purposefully doesn't own its own sample assets. We leave the recruitment, the incentivization, the management of the panels to the panel asset professionals. We work as that intermediary sourcing supplier to our clients, be it programmatically through Zamplia, which is our marketplace, or through a full service field services process like coming through the Logit Group directly, where we would program host. Where we use it, it depends. So I'll let you kind of where we...
Yeah, so I guess to your question, the answer is both, right? So in our first research project we did there, we implemented in the router before we actually entered into a survey. In the second and third cases, we actually embedded those questions into the program, the survey itself. So you can use it on both sides, and sometimes you can use it in combination. But yeah, it's pretty flexible in terms of how you can deploy it and implement it.
But it also speaks to that partnership that I mentioned about through the research ecosystem, all the way from the buyers and the stakeholders, people that are getting the final research, all the way back to the suppliers. I mean, we're providing feedback to our partners, our panel partners, to be able to further enhance and cleanse their source. We're providing better data to our clients. We're kind of focusing and investing our resources and our financial resources on that end, on the quality side, and that our partners are investing their resources, time and efforts on the recruitment side. And they'll tell you, first off, the recruitment process and challenges around it are drastically different now than they were years ago.